A near abduction in a snowy forest. A home invasion nobody saw coming. A toxic relationship with a secret so sharp it nearly tore a family apart. The horror in these stories doesn't end when the moment passes. It lingers. It changes you. Sometimes the scariest things aren't hiding in the shadows. They're right there in the open, waiting for someone to notice. If you enjoy real audio stories that cut deep, subscribe for more. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you know about love gone wrong. Sometimes, the monsters aren't where you expect them. Most people think monsters are under the bed or hiding in the corners of basements. That's what you imagine as a kid, keeping your feet tucked in, flashlight ready, just in case. But no one warns you about the real monsters. The ones who pull out your chair at dinner, who text you to come home safe, who you think would never hurt you. The ones you let into your life because you're sure you know them. I thought I did. I used to believe hiding was just for children, but I learned how to do it too, in my own way. When you're in high school, secrets usually mean cheating on a test or skipping class. My secret wasn't like that. I hid mine so deep, sometimes I almost forgot it was there. It started on a Thursday after school. I can't even remember what we were fighting about. Probably something stupid, like me texting someone he didn't like or laughing too long at someone's joke. I don't remember the words, but I remember the feeling in the room. The air was heavy. Kyle paced back and forth, not yelling, just quiet. He always got quiet before things went wrong. There was never a warning in his face or his voice. I heard my phone leave my hand. The sound it made against the wall stuck with me, a slap, a sharp ping, and the battery shooting out, almost rolling under the bed. Sometimes I still hear that sharp ping in my dreams. I noticed right away that Kyle didn't look angry. He stared at me with these hollow eyes, like I'd turned into a stranger. He didn't yell. He bent down, picked up a chunk of glass from a broken picture frame I hadn't even noticed falling. He held the piece in his hand, just looking at it, then at me. My head went quiet, like someone had turned off the sound in the room. The world narrowed to that one bad moment. You might imagine there was screaming or that I fought back, but none of that happened. My mind just shut off. It felt like being underwater, everything slow and heavy. The sting in my arm came first. I didn't even see it happen. Just a sharp scratch, almost like a cat's claw. When I looked down, there was a thin red line. Nothing dramatic, but enough to make me suck in my breath. Kyle let out a sound, a half laugh that wasn't really a laugh, and told me it was my fault. I don't remember what he said after that. I blinked back tears, pretended it was nothing, and started picking up my phone pieces so I wouldn't have to look at him. I coated my arm in soap and water, dressed the cut, and pretended it never happened. If you're wondering what I did next, the answer is nothing. I didn't run. I didn't call anyone. I just cleaned up and kept quiet. And I never imagined it would happen again, or how much worse things would become. That was the first time. There were others. Some days were good, like these golden hours where you convince yourself that bad things don't happen to people who are careful. I kept the scratches and bruises hidden. Long sleeves, makeup, made up reasons for why I flinched when someone hugged me. My mom once asked about a cut on my hand, and I told her I slipped washing dishes. She nodded, and that was that. There were a lot of that was that's in those days. Keeping it secret felt like walking around with something rotting under the floorboards. Every morning I woke up surprised no one had found out. My friends would talk about boys being dumb or relationships being hard. And I'd laugh along because the other option was breaking down at lunch. You think about telling someone, at least once. I stood in front of mirrors, checking the edges of bruises, trying to decide if this one looked bad enough to do something about. It never did, not to me. People always say they don't understand why someone doesn't speak out. They say it's easy to just tell someone, or that they'd never let it get that far. But fear is louder than pain. It drills into your head, telling you nobody would believe you or everyone would blame you for not leaving. Kyle never cried after. He never begged me not to go. I think that made it harder. I spent more time convincing myself I was making it a big deal, that maybe love was supposed to hurt sometimes, just not like this. Every day after the first time, I walked a little smaller. You adjust faster than you think. You learn when to laugh and when to keep your mouth shut. I got smart about what I wore and what I said. The best lies were the simple ones. I walked into a door, or I'm just tired. Nobody pushed. After a while, I didn't even have to lie. People filled in the blanks for me. That was almost a relief. At least I didn't have to spell it all out. You get used to silence, but not in a peaceful way. I started jumping whenever my phone buzzed. I got good at counting the ways things could go wrong. A plate dropped in the kitchen, footsteps in the hallway, Kyle's car pulling onto my street when I wasn't expecting it. Even good days made me suspicious. He'd kiss me on the forehead and buy me coffee, and part of me wanted to trust it. The other part waited for the turn. There was always a turn. Secrets get heavy if you carry them long enough. It's like dead weight nobody else can see. I'd walk into rooms and feel like people could smell it on me. This thing I'd let happen. I stopped making eye contact with teachers and friends, just in case they asked questions I couldn't answer. I shrank in my own world, and even my dreams felt gray and flat. But you can't hide everything forever. The truth has a way of bubbling up when you least expect it, when you catch your reflection and see how tired you look, or your voice cracks at a simple question. Some secrets don't stay buried, even if you want them to. Looking back, I see all the times I could have said something, could have changed something. But when you're scared, you make bargains with yourself. You promise you'll tell tomorrow, or when it gets bad enough. I kept telling myself it would never get that bad again. I thought I was safe once I finally blocked Kyle on everything. He never came back, and I felt relief. But the fear didn't really leave. It just settled in, quieter, like background noise. I learned to move forward, or at least pretend to. Still, there are moments when the past presses in, when you think life is finally moving forward, hour by hour, like nothing ever really changes. But sometimes, everything shifts in a single moment, and you realize the secret you buried isn't finished with you yet. After years of telling myself the past was over, I started to believe it. I went to work, paid bills, kept my head down. My mom and I would share dinner if our schedules lined up, and most nights I'd watch something mindless until I drifted off. Sometimes, when the phone buzzed late, my heart would skip, but it was never his name. I told myself that was enough, that quiet was the same thing as safe. It was late when the call came, maybe close to midnight. I was already in bed, my phone face down. The ring was sharp and insistent, slicing through the hush of the apartment. I almost let it go, but something about the hour made me pick up. On the other end, a woman's voice cut through static and sirens. She said my name, asked if I was there. It took me a second to realize it was a nurse from Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, where my mom sometimes worked extra shifts. She sounded out of breath, words tumbling out fast. I could hear the sirens behind her, echoing through the line. She told me my mom had been hit by a car. She's breathing, she's awake, but she's hurt. The words didn't make sense at first. I pressed the phone hard against my ear, trying to force the world to slow down. The nurse said the driver was drunk. I asked who. I needed to know. There was a long pause, long enough for my mind to fill with every possible answer but the right one. Then she said it. You'll never guess his name. It was Kyle. I sat up, my jaw locked so tight it hurt. The room felt smaller, like the air was being sucked out. Kyle. I said it out loud the way you test if something is real. The nurse kept talking, explaining what happened. He hadn't just hit my mom. He'd struck 6 other people too. Witnesses had stopped him on the spot. First responders wrestling him out of the car before he could do more damage. My head felt full of static. Getting to the hospital was a blur. Every minute waiting for a ride, every step down the hall, felt heavy and wrong. I kept replaying the last time I'd seen my mom healthy, her hands busy with dishes or folding laundry. Now she was somewhere behind those doors, and I couldn't shake the feeling that if I'd spoken up before, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe she wouldn't be here. A nurse met me just outside the ER. She didn't say much, just led me down a hallway that buzzed with fluorescent lights. My mom was small in the bed, one arm in a cast, her cheeks swollen and bruised. She still managed to smile when she saw me. I gripped her hand, holding on so tight my knuckles went white. They told me she'd recover. A broken wrist, lots of bruises, maybe physical therapy. It wasn't fatal. I tried to feel relief, but mostly I felt hollow. I sat beside her, not sure if I should apologize, confess, or just sit there in silence. I thought about every night I'd lied to her, every time I'd hidden bruises or made excuses. I told myself I'd kept her safe by keeping quiet, but sitting there, it was clear that silence hadn't protected anyone. The fear that kept me from speaking up, thinking it was better not to stir things up, that maybe I was overreacting, suddenly felt flimsy. All those years, I'd convinced myself the secret was mine to manage. Now it was out in the open, and it was bigger than me. People think coming clean is dramatic, like a scene in a movie, yelling, tears, some big confrontation. But for me, it was just quiet. I sat in that chair, listening to the machines and the nurses' voices in the hallway. I couldn't stop thinking about what the nurse had told me. Kyle had been stopped by witnesses, tackled before he could run. He'd hurt 7 people in a single night. I'd spent so long believing if I just waited, the past would fade. But it hadn't. It came back, louder and sharper than before. Looking at my mom, I realized the secret I'd carried wasn't just mine anymore. Someone I loved had been hurt. Every time I'd chosen silence, every time I'd swallowed the truth, it had let things fester. Kyle did this, but my silence made it easier for him to keep going. That's a hard thing to face. Sometimes you keep a secret so long it becomes part of you. Sometimes all it takes is one terrible night to shake it loose. That call from Columbia Presbyterian changed everything, and it forced me to face the secret I'd carried for years. People always say it's simple to speak up when something's wrong. I used to think that too. But when it's your story, everything gets tangled. The fear is sharp and real. You wonder what happens next, who might turn away and how much you'll lose. Even after the hospital and after my mom's bruises started to fade, I stood alone in my room, listening to the quiet and trying to steady my breath. That's when the police called and said they needed to talk. The officers didn't seem surprised by nerves. They handed me a bottle of water and a tissue, like they'd done this before. The room where I gave my statement was cold, the kind of cold that settles into your skin. I sat across from them, hands shaking, trying to remember how to start. When they asked about Kyle, I felt my voice catch. I told them about the first time, the broken picture frame, the line of blood on my arm. I told them how it kept happening, always when he was quiet. The words came out slow, like I was pulling them up from somewhere deep. I kept waiting for the officers to react, but they just listened, their pens moving at the same steady pace. They asked if anyone else knew. I told them no, not my mom, not my friends, not anyone. They pressed a little, asking if I thought he might have hurt anyone else. I shook my head, but the question stuck with me. I started to wonder if I'd missed something, if there were signs I hadn't seen. I left that day feeling drained, not sure if I'd done the right thing. The next day, the phone rang again. They wanted me to come back in. I wore the same sweatshirt, hood up, hands in my pockets. When I walked in, I saw another woman about my age sitting in the waiting area, eyes fixed on her phone. Her hands twisted her sleeves just like I did. We didn't look at each other, not at first. The detective called us in together. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one. Seeing her story mirrored mine shattered my isolation. We sat across from each other, both of us waiting for the other to speak. Her story was different. Different house, different excuses, different ways of hiding bruises. But the fear was the same. She stumbled over the hard parts, corrected herself, then let it all spill out. I recognized the way her voice faded at certain moments. We both paused at the same places. Both tried to fill the silence with anything but the truth. Sitting in that room together, I felt something shift. We didn't need to explain. The detective gave us time, letting us talk, sometimes just letting the silence fill up the space. I realized how much I'd needed to know I wasn't alone. There was anger, too, at him, at myself, at the way nobody ever seems to notice until it's too late. But mostly it was relief, heavy and strange. When the detective asked if I wanted to press charges, I didn't hesitate. I said, yes, and felt weight shift in my chest. The other woman nodded too. We didn't talk after, but there was something between us, a kind of silent agreement that we'd both carried this for too long. Testifying side by side, we realized speaking out gave us unexpected strength. Each time I told my story, it felt a little less like a nightmare, and more like something that actually happened. Not easier, just more real. The truth didn't lighten the load. It just made it visible. I didn't feel brave. I just wanted to stop feeling afraid all the time, to stop scanning the parking lot, or jumping at every late-night buzz. I wanted the secret out of me, even if it meant carrying it differently. It's strange how telling the truth makes things heavier before they get lighter. People like to say the truth sets you free, but for me, it just changed the shape of the weight I was carrying. I didn't have to hold it alone anymore. The silence broke, and something new, rough and honest, took its place. There were two stories now, not just one, connected by fear, bruises, and the decision to finally speak. I left the station that night with my head down, but my steps felt steadier. The world outside looked the same, but I knew something had changed. But speaking up was only the beginning. What happened next would test my courage in new ways. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with music or cheers. It's just a door opening into a cold, bright room and the sound of your own shoes on the floor. The morning of the hearing, I sat at a table across from Kyle. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the light had drawn the color out of him. The judge, a woman with tired eyes, kept her voice steady. There weren't many people in the room. No one glanced at me. The whole thing felt quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. When it was my turn, I answered what I could. Sometimes the questions were simple. What did you see? What did you feel? What did you do next? Other times, I had to stop and find the words, like picking glass out of a wound. I told them about the broken frame, the sting on my arm, the way I hid the marks. I tried to keep my voice flat. I didn't want to give him anything to look at. I watched the judge write, her pen moving in small, careful lines. The prosecutor nodded, waiting for me to finish. The defense asked a few questions, but nothing stuck. They tried to poke holes, but the story held. Sarah spoke after me. She kept her eyes down, hands locked tight around her notebook. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. She told her story, piece by piece. Some of it matched mine, and some of it was new. She talked about hiding bruises, about making excuses. I could see her trying to keep it together. When she finished, the room was silent for a long time. My mom took the stand. She spoke about the night of the accident, about seeing headlights and hearing the crunch of metal. She didn't cry. She just told them how it felt, how she was afraid to walk outside afterward. I watched her from my seat, trying not to move. She finished and stepped down. I wanted to go to her, but I stayed where I was. The courtroom isn't like TV. There's no drama, no shouting, just a lot of waiting and the buzz of old lights. I kept looking at the table, tracing a scratch with my finger. I didn't want to see Kyle. I didn't want to see anyone. Every part of me felt numb. Convictions in these cases are rare, making ours all the more significant. The judge listened, nodded, wrote more notes. When she finally spoke, her voice was even. She read the verdict, guilty. Kyle got 2.5 years behind bars. That was the number, 2.5. I heard it and tried to let it mean something. Guilty. I should have felt relief, but I felt tired. My hands were cold. My jaw ached from clenching it. I watched the bailiffs lead Kyle away, his head down, and I waited for something inside me to shift. There was no applause. Just the sound of shoes on the floor and the low murmur of people leaving. Sarah gave me a quick nod. My mom squeezed my hand. That was it. You think justice is supposed to fix something, but it doesn't. It just puts the truth out in the open, where everyone can see it. The bruises and memories don't vanish. The fear doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. I thought about the other cases that never made it this far, the people who walked away with nothing but their story. Ours would end up in a file, proof that it happened. This isn't about applause. Justice is a slow sunrise, barely visible at first, but enough to lift the shadows inch by inch. I stepped out of the courthouse and felt the air on my face. It was cold, but I could breathe. My shoulders dropped a little. The world looked the same, but I knew something had shifted. I walked home with my mom. Sarah went her own way. We didn't say much. Nobody tells you what to do after the verdict. There's no script for the quiet that comes next. No instructions for what to feel. I just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, trying to figure out what came after justice. The doors closed behind us, and the city kept moving. Nobody noticed what had happened inside, just another day for everyone else. For me, the noise faded, and I was left with the quiet. That's when I started to notice what justice really leaves behind. Trauma doesn't just disappear when the courtroom empties out. It's heavy in a way that's hard to explain, something you carry even when you think you've put it down. I thought that once the sentence was handed out, I'd feel lighter. Instead, it was like waking up in a new place where the rules had changed and nothing felt familiar. I'd tell myself I was safe, that it was over, but my body forgot the danger was over before my mind did. The first days after court were strange. My routine was the same, Alarm, work, groceries, dinner, but nothing felt right. I'd catch myself standing in the shower, waiting for a sound that never came. Sometimes I'd wake up from a nightmare, heart pounding, convinced someone was in the room with me. The nightmares weren't always about what happened. Sometimes it was just the feeling. A cold room, the sense of being watched, the weight of someone's eyes. I'd jolt awake, tangled in sheets, and need a few minutes to remember where I was. It wasn't just at night. During the day, memories would drop in uninvited. I'd be making coffee and suddenly remember the sound of glass breaking, or the way my arm stung. I started to notice how certain smells or songs could bring everything back. I'd see someone in a crowd, a flash of a jacket, a tilt of a head, and my chest would tighten. Even though I knew he was locked up, I kept thinking I saw his face everywhere. My brain played tricks, swapping strangers for him, making me double-check and triple-check before I could relax. Small things set me off. A door slamming, a fork dropped on the floor, a voice out in the hallway. I'd flinch, my muscles tensing before I could think. Sometimes I'd check the locks twice before bed, then get up again just to be sure. I tried counting backward, deep breathing, pressing my hands together until they hurt. It helped a little, but never for long. Hypervigilance is what the counselors call it, but to me, it just felt like never really being able to let my guard down. I didn't talk about it at first. People around me wanted to believe everything was back to normal. I wanted that too, but I could tell I'd changed. I sat with my back to the wall in restaurants. I avoided crowded places or anywhere I might feel trapped. Some days I'd get through work just by focusing on the next small task, telling myself if I could just make it to lunchtime, I'd be okay. The worst part was the isolation. Even when I was surrounded by people, I felt alone. I didn't know how to explain why I jumped at shadows, or why I sometimes disappeared from group texts for days. Friends would ask if I was okay, and I'd say yes, because it was easier than trying to put words to something so tangled. I started to wonder if maybe I was broken for good. It took me a while to try therapy. I thought I could just push through, that if I ignored it long enough, it would fade. But the nightmares kept coming, and the fear didn't let up. My first therapist listened without flinching. She told me I wasn't crazy. She said the way I felt made sense, that trauma lingers in the body even after the danger is gone. That helped more than I expected. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could say out loud that I was scared or angry or tired of feeling like this. Therapy didn't erase anything, but it made the memories less sharp. Some days I'd realize I'd gone a whole afternoon without thinking about him. That was new. I started going to a support group. Counselors say support groups ease the isolation, and I get why. Sitting in a room with people who understood, I didn't have to explain myself. We'd talk about the little things, how to get through a bad night, what helped when the panic crept in. Sometimes we just sat in silence and let it be enough. There was comfort in knowing I wasn't the only one who felt this way. Over time, I stopped thinking of myself as broken. I realized I was bruised, but not beyond repair. I started to like things again, going for walks, cooking food that actually tasted good, listening to music with the windows open. The fear didn't disappear, but it got quieter. I learned to expect it, to let it pass through me instead of letting it decide everything. Some days were better than others. There were still bad nights, still moments when I'd freeze at a sound or see his face in a crowd. But I didn't let it stop me as much. I noticed I was changing in small ways. I'd catch myself laughing at something dumb on TV, or making plans for the weekend without worrying who might be watching. I started to trust myself again, even if I still checked the locks more than I needed to. The nightmares faded, not gone, but less frequent. When they did come, I could remind myself that I was safe. That helped. I also started paying more attention to the people around me. I could spot the signs in others, the way someone kept their eyes down or flinched when a door slammed. I didn't always say anything, but I understood. I knew what it felt like to carry something heavy and hope no one noticed. Sometimes I'd nod or offer a smile, just so they knew they weren't invisible. Despite the scars, I learned I wasn't defined by fear, and that's a lesson we all need. The weight of trauma doesn't vanish, but it shifts. It's possible to keep moving, even with the heaviness, and as I learned to live with it, I realized I wasn't the only one. There are more of us out there than you'd think, each carrying our own stories, sometimes hidden, sometimes just beneath the surface. After everything with Kyle, the idea of moving on never fit the way people imagine. The house didn't go back to normal. Instead, it settled into a new kind of routine. My mom walks around checking the doors and windows before bed, sometimes circling back to the kitchen or flipping the porch light just to reassure herself. She doesn't say anything about it, but I can tell she's listening for sounds outside. These days I flinch less when the phone rings, but I notice her tense up every time it's late or unexpected. We don't talk about that night much, but it's always there, sitting in the quiet. Sometimes I'll hear her get up in the middle of the night to check the locks again. Fear doesn't just land on one person. It spreads out, thin as smoke, and settles in the corners of the house. The aftershocks don't come when you expect them. I find myself locking my car before I've even closed the door, or watching couples argue in the grocery store, reading their body language in ways I never did before. My mom keeps a first aid kit in more than one room now. There's a shorthand between us, sometimes just a look or a question like, "You're okay?" And that's enough. The trauma didn't just hit me, it changed how my family moves through the world. It's not just about what happened to me, it's about the way fear and anxiety ripple out, changing habits, routines, and the way we trust each other. People sometimes ask why I stayed quiet so long. They mean well, but there's always something behind the question, like they want to understand the logic of fear. It never feels logical when you're inside it. If I thought hiding things would keep my mom safe, I was wrong. All it did was let the fear grow in silence, touching everyone around me in ways I couldn't see at the time. My aunt started pausing before unlocking her car at night. My younger cousins stopped talking about their own relationships. It's like passing out invisible souvenirs. No one wants them, but everyone ends up with one. Time doesn't make it tidy. Some days dinner is quiet. Other nights, someone cracks a joke and for a moment, we almost feel like ourselves again. But reminders pop up in small ways. A story on the news, a joke that lands wrong, a memory that breaks in when you're not ready. There's no big conversation, just a slow, steady adjustment to a new normal. Sometimes it feels like we're all waiting for the next bad thing, even if we try not to admit it. What surprised me most was how my perspective changed. I started noticing signs in other people. At work, if someone goes quiet when the room gets loud, or a friend avoids talking about their boyfriend, I see it. I don't ask big questions, just small ones, enough to let them know I'm paying attention. Now when I spot that flinch in someone else, I know how to reach out. Sometimes it's just, "Let me know if you ever want to talk." It's awkward, but I wish someone had said it to me. There are details only people who've been there recognize, and I try to be the person who notices. True crime shows hit different now. When I hear about missing persons or unsolved cases, my mind drifts to all the stories that never get told. I wonder how many people are carrying secrets like I used to, heavy, unfinished, and silent. There's no way to count them, but you can feel it sometimes, like a current under the surface. I think about Sarah, the other woman from court. Our stories overlapped just enough to make a difference. I hope she's found a place to breathe. Trust is still something I'm working on. It didn't come back just because the verdict was read. Sometimes I freeze in new situations, or second-guess people who haven't done anything wrong. Getting better isn't a straight line. Some pieces of fear just get quieter. They don't disappear. I'm still learning how to let go. But I know I'm not alone in that. What I keep coming back to is how much it matters to speak up. For a long time, I thought telling my story was just about my own relief. But every time I share it, someone else reaches out. Maybe it's a message. Maybe just a look. Sometimes a coworker says thanks after a long pause. That's when I realize the secret I carried wasn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who needs proof they're not alone. Community awareness and support really do help break the silence. Even one person speaking out can make it safer for someone else. That's how cycles end, one person at a time. The power of individual action is real. Survivor-led advocacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just being the first to say something or offering a quiet invitation to talk. I think about the bystanders in my own story, the nurse who called, the other woman who came forward. It showed me that speaking up, even awkwardly, can change everything. If you see someone struggling, don't wait for the perfect words. Sometimes just noticing is enough. If you've carried a secret like this, let us know below. You're not alone. Sharing your story, even in a small way, can help break the silence for someone else. Stories remain untold. Yours might be next. Don't wait to speak up. Because sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones people tell around a campfire. Sometimes they're the ones that stay hidden the longest. If you're holding something heavy, or trying to get through something like this, you're not the only one out there. Sharing your hidden horror can help someone else find their voice, and sometimes that's the first step toward healing. It might take longer than you want to find a way out, but there's always a path, even if it's not easy to see at first. If someone you know seems guarded, give them space to speak. Their horror might be hidden just out of sight. If this resonated, please like and subscribe, and help someone feel seen today by sharing this video. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones we carry alone. Let's bring them into the light.